Hello, this is our project for ECON 2105, focusing on the macroeconomics of Japan. Okay, so first we're going to be discussing the economy of Japan in the past. So post World War II, Japan was left in shambles. Estimated uh, lives lost was 3.1 million and then $56 billion in damages. So after the war, there was a rapid recovery in economic growth during the economic miracle. So this was during the 1950s to 1980s. Uh, so Japan's economy grew four times in the period of 15 years, from 1958 to 1973. And then during that time, GDP growth averaged around 10% each year. These factors that contribute to this insane growth are the manufacturing techniques such as Kaizen and the Keiretsu system, which allowed like close relationship between Japanese corporations and manufacturers. And then following the economic miracle, you have the lost decades in the 1990s. So this was due to soaring asset prices of the stock and the real estate in the later half of the 1980s. The high prices were due to uh, speculation in hopes that the prices would go even higher. And then in 1992, the bubble popped, and then these prices sharply fell, starting the period of the lost decade. And the GDP growth was less than 1%. Okay, so here in the first image, you have the real economic growth of Japan. Uh, they're in 4-year intervals. And all of them show sustained growth of over 7.5%. And then in the image on the right, you have real GDP of Japan from 1890 to 1990. So you have the 1940s with the post-war shock, and then after that you have the economic miracle where like the economy grew exponentially, and then in the 1990s you have like the leveling off due to the lost decade. So, Japan's economy in the present, it's still a economic powerhouse, ranking fourth in the world's largest GDP, behind USA, China, and Germany. Um, so, some issues that plague Japan's economy is low birth rates and aging population. So, the elderly population, considered 65 and over, composes around 23.4% of the entire population, and in the next couple of decades, Japan could face a decrease in productivity, impacting its GDP growth. To combat against the low GDP growth and deflation, Shinzo Abe created the economic policy Abenomics, known as Abenomics, and they can be broken down to three arrows. So first is to print money to combat deflation, and then use policies policies that use fiscal stimulus to ramp up economic activity, and also deregulation to promote innovation and outside investment for economic growth. Okay, so the effects of Abenomics. So when Shinzo Abe took office in 2012 and implemented the three arrow policy, it really only saw a 1% GDP growth when the target was a 2% yearly GDP growth and a 2% yearly inflation. However, these goals were never achieved during his term. So now we're going to be talking about the GDP of Japan, its components. So as of 2022, Japan's GDP is 4.232 trillion US dollars with a GDP growth rate of 1%. It's mostly a service-based economy, as it's around 71.31%, and agriculture makes a very small portion of the GDP at around 1.2%, 0.02%.
This chart follows the labor force classification chart from our macroeconomics class, as I included Japan's information from 2021. Japan's working age population from 2021 comprises of two separate age groups. The first age group is ages 15 through 64, and it has a population of 74,504,000 people. This takes up approximately 59.4% of the total population in 2021. The second age group is ages 65 and older, and it has a population of 36,214,000 people. This is approximately 28.9% of the total population in 2021. It demonstrates Japan's aging population and demographic shift as it leads to the potential labor shortages in the market. The left pie chart illustrates Japan's labor force participation rate from 2021 using the data from the chart on the previous slide. As you can see, the labor force includes about 62.4% of the working age population. Again, the working age population includes ages 15 and older. Therefore, Japan's aging population heavily influences and dilutes the labor force participation rate. The pie chart on the right also uses data from the previous slide. It shows the employment and unemployment rates from 2021. The employment rate is strong with 92.7%, and the unemployment rate is only 2.8% of the labor force population. Here I made a bar graph that demonstrates the composition of Japan's workforce in 2021. Services hold a significant portion of the labor force with approximately 72.7%. Activities falling under services include wholesale, transportation, food service, insurances and finances, real estate, education, and much more. Industry is the second largest with 24.2%, and agriculture is the smallest with only 3.1% of the labor force. The democratic shift with Japan's rapidly aging population contributes to the shrinking labor force. Because small and medium businesses make up roughly 99.7% of all companies in Japan, shortages will greatly impact them. Additionally, there is a large shortage of information technology professionals. In this field, there are 1.35 vacancies for every job seeker. Also, it is estimated that Japan will be short of 450,000 IT workers by the year 2030. As the country aims to make its digital transition, the shortfall in digital skills severely complicates Japan's future productivity and competitiveness.
Japan is renowned for its diverse and robust industries. The automotive industry is a global leader, home to major manufacturers like Toyota, Honda, and Nissan, contributing significantly to GDP and employment. The electronics and technology sector boasts companies such as Sony and Panasonic and Canon, emphasizing innovation and research. As for robotics and automation, Japan is a pioneer with firms like Fanuc and Yasuoka Electric driving advancements in manufacturing and healthcare. Lastly, the pharmaceuticals and biotechnology sector features key players like Takeda and Astellas, known for their cutting-edge research and global impact. Japan's economy thrives on its strong export sector. The top export is vehicles, accounting for $154.1 billion, followed by machinery at $129.4 billion. Electrical machinery and optical and medical apparatus contribute to $101.6 billion and $41.9 billion, respectively. Other significant exports include plastics, organics, chemicals, mineral fuels, iron and steel, ships and boats, and precious metals. These diverse export portfolios underscores Japan's role as a key player in the global market. Japan's imports are essential to its economy, ensuring resource availability for its industries. Energy products like crude petroleum and LNG are crucial, sourced mainly from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Russia. Raw materials including copper, aluminum, and rubber are imported to support manufacturing. The food sector relies on imports of meat, seafood, and grains from countries like the US, Australia, and Brazil. This reliance on imports highlights Japan's integration into the global supply chain and its need for diverse international trade relationships.
Japan's balance of trade in recent years, as you can see on the chart on the right, has been in the negative area, meaning that Japan currently has a trade deficit, which means that Japan imports more goods and services than they export. Japan currently, as of April 2024, has a trade deficit of 3.55 billion US dollars. Between 2022 to 2024, the trade deficit of Japan is currently shown to have trended to decrease. The data table shows the percent change in volume of imports and exports of goods and services for Japan from 2018 to 2023, and then shows the future trend of changes from 2024 to 2028. You can see during the pandemic year in 2020, both the volume of imports and exports significantly decreased for Japan. And starting from 2021 onward till further trends showing up to 2028, both imports and exports are shown to increase overall, with exports showing to increase at a greater pace than imports.
Japan's economic growth. In Japan, there was a period called the Lost Decade, starting in the 1990s and ending in 2001. During this time, Japan saw low GDP growths and recessions. Its economy suffered tremendously. In the 2000s, Japan saw a shift from this trend and it started to slowly recover and show improvements. In the early 2010s, Japan still experienced continued low inflation and mild deflation. The government launched various economic policies, such as Abenomics, to help revive the economy. When COVID hit in 2020, inflation rates became very unstable due to the inconsistent supply chains and changes in consumer behavior. As the pandemic continued, inflation rates began to show, and in recent years, 2022 and 2023, inflation rates rose significantly. Japan's economy shows signs of recovery with positive growth rates today. The growth of the economy was encouraged by various policies that were put into place. The BOJ's aggressive monetary easing helped stimulate economic activity and combat the deflation. The fiscal policy overlooked the government spending and stimulus packages supporting the economy. Alongside of these, technological advancements increased productivity, and Japan's growth in exports strengthened the economy.
Japan has one of the lowest birth rates and fertility rates globally. Because Japan's fertility rate is below the replacement rate, there is a large decline in the working age population. Additionally, a significant portion of the population is over 65. This mixed with Japan's low birth and fertility rates leads to a shrinking labor force. The demographic shift increases pension and healthcare costs for the large older age group. Japan has a high public debt and has a comparison rank of number 2 compared to other countries. This poses risks to long-term economic growth and sustainability. Also, Japan often experiences trade imbalances due to imports exceeding exports. A large portion of Japan's imports include energy and raw materials. Lastly, Japan has strict employment practices that limit flexibility in hiring and firing. These include lifetime employment and seniority-based wages. It creates slow job creation and reduces economic adaptability.
Despite continuing to have one of the most robust economies in the world, Japan faces several economic issues as discussed, and compared to other advanced nations, had a slow economic recovery following the pandemic. Even before the pandemic, Japan's economy was struggling, and while Abenomics did help Japan's economy make some recovery and face some of the economic issues, the recovery was minimal and there continued to be economic issues, especially in regards to workers' wages, which remain stagnant, and labor shortages. While the efforts of the current Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida helped increase workers' wages in large businesses, that's not necessarily the case for the smaller businesses, and more efforts need to be made to improve workers' ability to negotiate with businesses over wages in order for the current Prime Minister's plan to work out as intended. In regards to labor shortages, the recent expansions planned for the special skilled worker systems, which intend to encourage more foreign workers to come work in Japan, could help deal with that issue. And the depreciating value of the yen could help increase export of Japanese goods as Japanese goods become cheaper, which in turn will help deal with the trade imbalance issue. If the Japanese government manages these economic issues that Japan currently faces well, Japan's economy could continue to prosper and remain as one of the top economies of the world.